The notification from my bank popped up on my phone as I was arranging flowers on my grandmother's grave. $2 million. Transferred. My hands trembled as I read the message, anger and disbelief washing over me in waves. Michael had actually done it. He'd taken my inheritance without even asking. My name is Emma Chin, and at 34, I never thought I'd be standing at my grandmother's grave realizing my husband of 8 years had betrayed me in the worst possible way. The flowers I held, white lilies, Grand's favorite, suddenly felt heavy in my hands. I had just lost the woman who raised me, who taught me everything I knew about business and self-respect, and now my husband had stolen the last gift she'd given me. The inheritance wasn't just money. It represented years of my grandmother's hard work building her real estate empire from nothing after immigrating to America with just $100 in her pocket. My phone buzzed again. A text from Michael. Don't freak out when you see the transfer. I'm using it to fund RevTech Series A. This is our big break, babe. Your inheritance is finally going to mean something. I stared at his message, my vision blurring with tears of rage. Our big break? My inheritance finally meaning something. The money had meant everything. It was my grandmother's legacy, her way of ensuring I would always be independent, just like she had been. But Michael had never understood that. To him, money sitting in an account was money wasted. He'd been pushing his tech startup for years, burning through our savings while chasing his dreams of Silicon Valley glory. I'd supported him, believed in him, even when things got tight. But this, taking my inheritance without even asking, this was different. I placed the lilies carefully on Gran's grave, my hand lingering on the cool marble of her headstone. I'm sorry, Gran, I whispered. I know this isn't what you wanted for me. I could almost hear her voice, strong and clear despite her battle with cancer. Emma, my sweet girl, never let anyone take advantage of your kindness. You're stronger than you know. She had told me that just weeks before she passed, her hand gripping mine with surprising strength as she made me promise to be careful with the inheritance. The money isn't just for you, she had said. It's everything I built, everything I learned. Use it wisely. Don't let anyone take it from you. But I had failed her. I had trusted Michael, believed in our partnership, and now he had taken everything without a second thought. When I got home that evening, Michael was in his home office, surrounded by monitors displaying charts and spreadsheets. He barely looked up when I walked in, his fingers flying over the keyboard. Hey babe, he said, his tone distracted. Great news, I've already got meetings set up with 3 major investors. Once they see we got solid backing, they'll be fighting to get in on this round. We're going to be huge. I stood in the doorway, watching him. The man I had married, the kind, considerate partner who had supported me through grad school, seemed like a stranger now. In his place was someone consumed by ambition, someone who could justify taking my inheritance because he thought he knew better than me. How could you do this? I asked, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. That money was for my grandmother. It was meant for me. He finally looked up, his expression a mixture of confusion and irritation. Come on, Emma. You're not seriously upset about this, are you? I'm investing it, not spending it. This is going to make us rich. Us, I repeated. There is no us in this, Michael. You took my inheritance without asking. You had no right. He pushed back from his desk, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. I had every right. We're married. What's yours is mine, remember? Besides, what were you going to do with it? Let it sit in a bank account gathering dust. That was my choice to make, I said, my voice rising. Not yours. Gran left that money to me for a reason. Michael stood up, his face flushing with anger. Your grandmother was old school, Emma. She didn't understand modern business. This is how things work now. You have to move fast, take risks. I'm doing you a favor. I stared at him, really seeing him for the first time. The arrogance, the entitlement, the complete disregard for my feelings or my grandmother's wishes. It had all been there, I realized. I just hadn't wanted to see it. But what Michael didn't know, what he hadn't bothered to find out before he made his grand move, was that I wasn't as helpless as he thought. Gran hadn't just left me money. She had taught me everything she knew about business, about protecting myself, about standing up for what was mine. I turned and walked out of his office without another word, leaving him to his spreadsheets and his dreams of tech glory. I had work to do. The next morning, I called Sarah Chen. My grandmother's longtime lawyer and friend. I hadn't wanted to make this call, had hoped I'd never need to, but Gran had insisted on introducing us months before she'd passed. Keep Sarah's number, she had said. Just in case. She knows what to do. Sarah picked up on the second ring. Emma, she said, her voice warm but professional. I was wondering when I hear from you. He took the money, I said simply. All of it. There was a pause, then Sarah sighed. I was afraid this might happen. Your grandmother was too. That's why we put certain measures in place. I felt the flicker of hope. What kind of measures? The inheritance wasn't just money in an account, Emma. Your grandmother set up a trust with very specific conditions. Any withdrawal over $10,000 requires dual authorization, yours and the trustees. And guess who the trustee is? I couldn't help but smile. You? Exactly. So unless you authorize that transfer. I didn't, I said quickly. Then what your husband did wasn't just morally wrong, it was illegal. The bank should never have processed that transfer without proper authorization. We can have it reversed immediately. I sank into my chair, relief washing over me. Really? Just like that? Just like that, Sarah confirmed. But Emma, there's more. Your grandmother knew something like this might happen. She left instructions. If anyone tried to access the trust illegally, they would trigger certain clauses. Would you like to know what those are? I thought about Michael sitting in his office, so sure of himself, so convinced he knew better than everyone else. Yes, I said firmly. Tell me everything. That evening, as I reviewed the documents Sarah had sent over, Michael burst into my home office, his face red with anger. The transfer was reversed, he shouted, waving his phone at me. What did you do? I looked up calmly, channeling my grandmother's quiet strength. I didn't do anything, Michael. The trust did exactly what it was designed to do, protect my inheritance from unauthorized access. He froze, confusion replacing his anger. What trust? What are you talking about? The trust my grandmother set up, I explained, my voice steady. Did you really think she'd just leave $2 million in a regular bank account? Gran was smarter than that. She built an empire from nothing. She knew how to protect what was hers. Michael's face paled as the implications sank in. But we're married. I had every right to. No, I cut him off. You didn't. And by attempting to access the trust without authorization, you've triggered some interesting clauses that Gran put in place. Clauses? His voice cracked slightly. What clauses? I stood up, gathering the papers Sarah had sent. Well, for starters, your attempted theft has been reported to the bank's fraud department. They're launching an investigation into RevTech's finances. Standard procedure when someone tries to misappropriate trust funds. Michael stumbled back, collapsing into a chair. You can't be serious. Emma, this will ruin everything. The investors, the series of funding. That's not all, I continued, ignoring his protests. Gran was very specific about what should happen if someone tried to steal from the trust. The clause triggers an immediate audit of all shared accounts and assets. Everything will be scrutinized, Michael. Everything. His face went from pale to ashen. I knew why. The creative accounting he'd been doing with our joint accounts, the money he'd borrowed from my personal savings for his startup, it would all come to light. You're bluffing, he said, but his voice trembled. You wouldn't do this to me. To us. I'm not doing anything, I replied. These are just the consequences of your actions. You chose to take what wasn't yours. Now you get to deal with what happens next. He stood up abruptly, running his hands through his hair. We can fix this, he said desperately. I'll call the bank, explain it was a misunderstanding. We can stop the investigation before it starts. I shook my head. It's too late for that. The process has already begun. This is insane, he exploded. I'm your husband. I was trying to help us build a future together. Your grandmother would have understood that. The mention of Gran made my blood boil, but I kept my voice calm. No, Michael. Gran understood exactly what kind of person you are. That's why she protected me from you. He stared at me, his expression hardening. Protected you? From me? I've given you everything. A beautiful home, a comfortable life. You haven't given me anything, I cut in. I earned my own way. The house? I pay for most of it with my salary while you chased your startup dreams. The comfortable life? I worked for that too. You've been so focused on your big break that you never noticed I was the one holding everything together. Michael's face twisted with rage. You ungrateful. He stopped himself, taking a deep breath. Fine, let's talk about this rationally. What do you want? Name your price to stop the investigation. I almost laughed at his attempt to negotiate. This isn't a business deal, Michael. This is about trust, respect, and consequences. You broke my trust when you tried to steal my inheritance. Now you get to face the consequences. He stormed out of the office, slamming the door behind him. I heard him stomping around upstairs, drawers opening and closing. A few minutes later, he came back with a packed bag. I'm staying at a hotel, he announced. When you're ready to be reasonable, call me. I watched him leave, feeling oddly calm. This wasn't how I had imagined my marriage ending, but in a way, it felt inevitable. Michael had shown his true colors, and there was no going back from that. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal meetings and financial discussions. The audit revealed exactly what I had suspected. Michael had been siphoning money from our joint accounts for years, using it to fund his startup while covering up the transfers with creative bookkeeping. Sarah was ruthless in pursuing every detail, every discrepancy. Your grandmother warned me about him, she told me during one of our meetings. She said he reminded her of your grandfather, charming, ambitious, but with no moral compass when it came to money. I hadn't known much about my grandfather. He had left Gran when my mother was young, taking most of their savings with him. Gran had rebuilt everything from scratch, turning her small real estate investments into a thriving business. Why didn't she tell me? I asked Sarah. She tried, in her way, Sarah replied gently, but she knew you had to learn some lessons for yourself. That's why she set up the trust the way she did, to protect you when you needed it most. As the investigation continued, RevTech's investors started pulling out. Michael's dream of Silicon Valley success crumbled as the truth about his financial manipulations came to light. He tried everything. Begging, threatening, attempting to negotiate, but nothing could stop what was coming. One morning, about a month after the failed transfer, I received an email from Sarah. Attached was a preliminary report from the forensic accountants detailing every penny Michael had taken from our joint accounts. The total made me feel sick. Over $300,000 over the past 3 years. I forwarded the report to Michael with a simple message: we need to talk. He showed up at the house that evening, looking haggard and defeated. The confident, ambitious man I had married was gone, replaced by someone who finally realized he couldn't charm or manipulate his way out of this situation. I can explain, he started, but I held up my hand. No need, I said. The numbers speak for themselves. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign the divorce papers Sarah has prepared. You're going to repay every penny you took from our joint accounts. And you're going to do it without fighting, unless you want the FBI involved in investigating your creative accounting practices. He slumped in his chair, all pretense of control gone. You're really doing this? Throwing away 8 years of marriage over money? No, I replied firmly. I'm ending our marriage because you proved you can't be trusted. The money is just evidence of that. I did it for us, he tried one last time. Everything I did was to build something better for our future. I shook my head, feeling a mix of pity and disgust. No, Michael. You did it for yourself. You always have. I just wish I had seen it sooner. He signed the papers without another word. As he stood to leave, he paused at the door. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I really thought I could make it work. I know, I replied. That's what makes it so sad. After he left, I sat in my grandmother's old armchair, one of the few pieces of furniture I had insisted on keeping when we bought the house. I could almost hear her voice, wise and gentle. Sometimes the hardest lessons teach us the most important things. She had been right, as usual. I had learned so much from this experience, about trust, about strength, about standing up for myself. The inheritance wasn't just money, it was a final gift from a woman who had faced her own battles and emerged stronger. 6 months later, I sat in Sarah's office, reviewing the final settlement. Michael had repaid most of what he had taken, selling his precious startup to cover the debt. RevTech, his dream of tech glory, was gone, along with most of his reputation in the industry. Your grandmother would be proud, Sarah said, closing the file. You handled this exactly as she would have. I smiled, thinking of Gran's strength, her wisdom, her unwavering belief in doing what was right. I had a good teacher, I replied. That evening, I visited Gran's grave again, bringing fresh lilies. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the cemetery, but I felt lighter than I had in months. You were right, Gran, I said softly, arranging the flowers. About everything. The trust, Michael, the importance of protecting what's yours. I finally understand all the lessons you tried to teach me. A warm breeze rustled the flowers, and I could almost hear her laugh, strong and clear. Of course I was right, my dear. Now, what are you going to do with everything you've learned? I smiled, touching the cool marble of her headstone one last time before standing. I had plans. Big ones. The inheritance wasn't just going to sit in a trust gathering dust. I was going to use it the way Gran had intended, to build something of my own, something lasting. Michael had been wrong about one thing. The money didn't need to be put to good use by him. It already had a purpose, empowering me to create my own legacy, just like my grandmother had done. As I walked back to my car, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The past year had been challenging, but I had emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. Gran's legacy lived on, not just in the trust she had left me, but in the lessons she had taught me about strength, independence, and standing up for what was right. This wasn't the end of my story, it was just the beginning. And this time, I was writing it on my own terms.